at the time, I couldn't have known that Facebook was going to become $1 trillion company. And of course, I'm being a bit sarcastic
Sure.
there, or facetious at least. I did leave a lot of money on the table, but I had enough to live on very well for the rest of my life. And so, I kind of, again, it's easy to be courageous when you don't have to worry where your next meal is coming from.
Three things you will learn from this episode. Number one, while walking away from a wildly successful tech career wasn't crazy. Number two, how to redefine happiness and success on your terms, even when it means starting over. And number three, the surprising overlap between boardrooms and green rooms and what comedians and leaders can teach each other. Welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I feature Olympians, CEOs, disruptors, authors, professional athletes, and the best of the best, where they share their stories of resilience with my lens on leadership and culture. Let's get started. What do you get when you mix one of Facebook's OG execs, a stand-up comic with with sharp takes and a sharper mic, a podcast host who's chatted with everyone from LL Cool J to Deepak Chopra, and a guy who ditched stock options to chase punchlines? You get Paul Ollinger, a rare blend of business
Hmm.
brains and backstage bravado. He's headlined the New York Comedy Festival, made crowds laugh from coast to coast, and still finds time to ask the big, uncomfortable question, what actually makes us happy? In this episode, we go from Silicon Valley to the Comedy Cellar, unpacking purpose, reinvention, and why the pursuit of reasonably happy might just be the boldest move of all. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay. That's very well written introduction.
Well,
Goodness.
thanks. I really enjoyed writing it. I'm so happy you're here, and we're gonna have some fun. So, for those of my audience that don't know who you are, could you share a little bit of your story?
Well, I'm really tired of people who don't know who I am. I mean, we got to change that.
Well,
It's
this
so
show will
much
change it.
work. That's right. My story, I'm from a big family, grew up in Atlanta, always wanted to make money, went to business school, told jokes at a talent show one night, and was bit by the comedy bug, not far north of you in Hanover, New Hampshire, that is. And and from there, I still had to go pay back my student loans, so I went to the digital media world. I've popped between the digital media world and the comedy world for the last 20 plus years. And in one of those iterations, I stumbled into a job as an early employee at Facebook, made some money, quit, now live in New York City and do stand-up comedy full time.
I love it. I love it. Now, you weren't just an early employee, like you were one of the really like few
Well, it's
hundred
all
beginning.
it's all yeah, it's all relative. I was about employee 250th,
Yeah.
and to give you some other context, the company had about 25 million monthly users when I started, and today it's over 3 billion. So it's
Incredible.
that was in 2007. There was an awful lot of growth in both the company and the audience in the 4.5 years that I worked there. And then since then, it's gotten even, it's gone bananas.
Yeah, it has. And it's grown. I mean, it's gobbled up Instagram. It's changed so much. So talk a little
Sure.
bit about what you were doing there and just kind of the work that you did.
I was on the sales team. I started out as a salesperson, then I started managing the Southwest region out of Los Angeles. I eventually ran the whole West Coast. And so that means we called on brand marketers out west. That would be Starbucks, Nike, Visa, Intel, the movie studios, major marketers to try to get them to create a presence on Facebook and start buying ads.
Mm.
And while I was there, we went from having untargeted, untrackable ads uh, to building pages out, and then we had these whole discussions about, well, you gotta, pardon me, you gotta get friends and followers to your page, and so it was before Facebook had really good video ads
Mhm.
and really started to use the technology and the data that they had after the IPO, which was after I left. So Facebook didn't really get serious about creating incredible advertising products until after 2012,
Got
and
it.
I had left in 2011. But today it's advertising products are the most sophisticated perhaps in the history of all media.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So you and I have a similar situation in that we both had long careers in a corporate place. And what gave you the confidence to leave? Because
I had a
comedy
lot
is
of money.
hard.
I had a lot of money. That's what did it. I mean,
Well, there you go.
I mean, it's amazing how brave you can be when you don't have to worry about paying your rent. So
Right.
I'll offer you that caveat that as brave as my career decisions are, I'm not risking insolvency to chase my dream. Now, I am sacrificing lovely vacations and a NetJets card, but like these are luxuries most people can't even imagine.
That's
So
true.
so yeah, I mean, so I left. I'll get more granular on that career path. I came out of Dartmouth Business School in 1997. I worked for a music startup that we went public. We crashed like everybody else in 2000. We got bought by Yahoo from the bottom of the dot-com bubble, and then starting at Yahoo, I got some stock options. And then for the next 4 years, that stock rose and appreciated, and I was able to pay off my student loans
Wow.
from business school. And I said, okay, now I'm going to go do stand-up comedy. And I went to LA and did stand-up comedy full time for 2 years. I opened for Norm Macdonald, Roseanne Barr, Kevin Nealon, Colin Quinn, all kinds of incredible people. But I was like, well, this comedy road is really, you got to put in 10 years before you even know if you're any good. And I had done 2 years full time, and I'm like, well, I just got engaged. I want to have a family. I need a job. I wasn't prepared to take the uncertain road
Yeah.
that comedians had to take. And it's funny, I'll come back to this in a second, but at the same time, I was carpooling from LA out to Orange County with these two very broke young comedians that were just starting to headline. And I was like, I'm not sure I have the guts these guys have to have economic uncertainty. So about that time, a friend of mine from Yahoo called and said, I don't know how the comedy's going, but I need a salesperson in LA. And I was like, and he was like, it's for this small social media company called Facebook. And I was like, oh yeah, it sounds good. I've heard it. It's growing fast. I knew some of the people who worked there. I was like, what the hell? This company could someday be as big as MySpace. And it was a joke. But that's really what, at the time, it was a quarter of the size of MySpace, a quarter
Right.
of the size of Yahoo. And that's who advertisers would compare us to. And they'd say, well, I can't spend money with you. I have to spend it on these better known brands.
Sure.
Well, obviously, you know, over the next couple of years, Facebook caught and exceeded MySpace and Yahoo. And I was thinking kind of tactically like that. And Zuck the whole time is saying, we're not in the same business those guys are. We're trying to connect humankind. And his vision was so bold that I even had a hard time getting my head around it. Not sure I believed it, honestly. But I worked there for 4.5 years. And after about 3 3/4, they asked me to move from LA to Palo Alto. And we had a young baby at home. My wife was pregnant with our second. She was on bed rest the entire pregnancy almost. And I'd moved around a lot at that point, and I was not inclined to want to pick up and move again unless I was going to stay someplace for a long time. And at that point, my heart just wasn't in it. And I said, and I knew my stock options were worth a whole bunch of money. And I said, well, I think I want to move home and
Mhm.
be where I grew up, and I want to be around my parents as they're aging and,
Yeah.
frankly, dying. And so that's what I did.
That's a bold, bold move, and all of this is a bold move. But um, I love that you prioritized what was important, and I think that's a really good lesson for people when they're stopping to think about their next move. Because a lot of people just move
Yeah.
for the money. They
Yeah.
just
Well, yeah, it cost me $20 million, but what the hell? I mean,
no. Oh.
no, I mean, I left a lot of money on the table, and and I didn't, at the time, I couldn't have known that Facebook was going to become $1 trillion company. And of course, I'm being, a bit sarcastic
Sure.
there, or facetious at least. I did leave a lot of money on the table, but I had enough to live on very well for the rest of my life. And so, I kind of, again, it's easy to be courageous when you don't have to worry where your next meal is coming from.
I love it. So you moved to New York.
Yeah.
You're relocate the whole family,
Well, that was sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
And I've moved around a bunch. I moved
Yeah.
back to Atlanta in
Okay.
2011, where I grew up. We lived there for 13 years, and then about almost 2 years ago now, my wife and I were in New York. We met here 20 years ago, so this is not an unfamiliar place to
Yeah.
us. And we were here, and I was thinking, gosh, maybe for comedy I should be here. And I didn't say anything about it. Then we got home, and she said, "When are we moving back to New York?" And
Hey,
next thing you know, we're coming up to interview at schools for our kids.
I love it. Well, I'm a New Yorker. I have great love for New York. I always will.
There's a
And
lot to love.
there's so much opportunity there. So, and especially for comedy, I would think it's just it's a really important place to be. So lots happening there. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the quest for happiness and, your ride, your journey, and what that means to you because you left the corporate career, you're gonna follow comedy. Money wasn't a concern. But what about this makes you happy and why was it important?
Well, the way you get snookered into a comedy career is that it you you volunteer to host a talent show at business school where you went because you wanted to make more money, not because you were
You
thinking
wanted
you'd
to
be
get into
you
comedy.
want to be a famous comedian. You tell jokes at that talent show, and you make a room of 300 people all laugh at the same time, and it's narcotic,
It feels
and
great.
it
Yeah.
and it's unbelievable. And you go, "Oh, this is what I want to do more of,"
Yeah.
and this is among these 180 classmates of mine who are all very smart. This is what makes me different. This is my thing. And then you go, "Oh, okay, so what does that mean?" I mean, when I was younger and single and wanted attention, because I wanted to impress women, like comedy was a great thing for that.
Well, it's a
As
big
I've
ego
gotten
stroke, right? I
Oh, it's a
mean,
huge ego
because
stroke. It's fuel for narcissists and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But as I've gotten older, I still do it. I mean, I don't I haven't picked up any women at comedy clubs. I've been married and faithful for 17 and a half years now,
good
so it's
job.
not like I'm doing, but it's the opportunity to you're still on stage and that still feeds your ego, but it's the opportunity to kind of do something dangerous
Yeah.
and to speak truth in a world where you have to be careful in so many other elements of your life. And it's just a really fun art form
So can we
that,
go
that
there
is a
for a
rush.
second? Because
Yeah,
I,
of
I want to
course.
talk about being careful in comedy because,
Yeah.
people are very woke now, and I think woke is a
Hmm.
good word. But they're also easily offended. And I know this from being a mother of teens, like things that we said in the 80s and the 90s, we know that we can't say them anymore. And
Hmm.
God help us when we show them a movie that we loved. They're like, oh my God, this is the most misogynistic, horrible thing. Mom, how could you love this? And I'm like, but
Yeah.
it was different. So how do you navigate those waters? Because it's easy to upset people.
I don't really spend too much time talking about politics. I don't spend too much time, as a middle-aged white man, when I come on stage, I can see younger, more diverse crowds basically cross their arms and,
Yeah,
you know, and change their attitude. And so it is a challenge because of the expectations and ironically, the prejudices that people have in their minds when somebody walks on stage.
sure.
I don't try to challenge wokeness that much. I don't. It's a very hard game to win,
No,
and it kind of
I agree. And
it kind of has to be your brand.
yeah,
And I'm a middle-aged dad who, I talk about being a dad, being married.
yeah,
I talk about technology and I talk about, wherever I find things in my life that frustrate me a lot. Um, I see myself, like, for example, my one of my bits is about how my wife loads the dishwasher and why it drives me crazy. Well, I'm not making
wait,
fun of
are
my.
you the Scandinavian architect of the dishwasher
Yes,
and
I'm
she's
the
the
good.
feral raccoon? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm the good person.
Yeah.
And so
Me
and
too. Me
so
too.
but it's not just that, because if you're just complaining about your spouse, then you're just complaining. The
Mm,
bigger the bigger thing about it is that this is a glimpse into my soul about why do I care so much about the dishwasher? Well, I care about it because I can't control anything else in the rest of the world. I feel powerless about um, about all the politics, all the woke stuff, all the injustices, all the inequality, whatever, right or left. I feel powerless to do anything about the things that frustrate me in the world.
Mm.
So I'm going to concentrate on something that absolutely
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I'm going to sweat the small stuff. And I think the reason that joke resonates is because there's a lot of people that feel that way.
Yeah.
We're trying to control, we feel powerless to control a chaotic world, and it
That's right.
manifests in the dishwasher as
Yeah.
if that matters. And so that's where, I mean, I try to find humor like that as opposed to, you know, look, I think pronouns are kind of silly, but that's not a battle I'm going to try to
No.
take on.
Well,
I'm
and
not
you don't
in
need
the
to go there. You have
in the
enough
first
material
well,
that people can
and
relate to.
in the first Trump administration, I realized, and I'm an independent, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I realized when you said the word Trump on stage, the audience goes like this. And
Absolutely.
both sides stop listening for different reasons. And unless you really want to take that on, unless you really want to be a political um, comedian, then you shouldn't. Then I just don't feel like it's worth going to. And by the way, if you are a political comedian, the total number of people you can reach is 50%. So, you know, anyway, that's sort of how I come at it. I'm
Yeah,
not worried.
I
I basically avoid the controversial stuff.
well, I think that's smart, and I think you've got plenty of material to work with, so it makes it fun. It makes it easy. So, what do we said this at the top? What do boardrooms and green rooms have in common?
I have no idea. You said that. That was your words. What do boardrooms and green rooms? Well, they both have four walls and a ceiling.
Yes,
They
well, that's
both they
obvious.
both they both bring a collection of
Let me
people
phrase it differently.
to a table.
How can comedy be leveraged in leadership?
I see these people like I'm gonna teach comedy to executives, and I'm like, okay, good luck, because as soon as some executive goes outside his or her comfort zone and tries to start being funny, they often step in it.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
The funniest people are the people that aren't trying to be funny. The funniest people are the people that are up there being themselves. And, you should always, the word authentic is, of course, overused,
Oh yeah.
but it's overused for a reason. It's, authenticity is what people connect to. And if you're up there, trying to bring levity to your organization, you're often going to come across as inauthentic.
It's true.
And
I
it's,
mean, you're forcing something that doesn't need to be forced. So, you had a lot of exposure to leadership at Meta or Facebook or whatever we're calling it.
Mhm.
And in your career, what were some of the best leadership lessons that you learned that prepared you for life now?
Well, um, I, I'm sure I'll come up with an example as we talk, but like my internal compass is always pointed towards the things that I care about. I mentioned earlier that Mark Zuckerberg, Zuck, was talking about we're trying to build an app to connect humankind.
Yeah.
He was very clear about what he was trying to do when he was 24, 25 years old. And uh, for people who weren't on board, they didn't stay long at the company.
Mm,
And I think that trying to align yourself, you're going to be happiest wherever you're in alignment with the mission, with the organization's mission.
yeah, I agree with
And
that.
if you're fighting that, you're probably at the wrong place. And so, and I've talked about this a lot in my writing and other podcasts. What you can align yourself with when you're 32 is often very different than what you can align yourself with when you're 54.
Agreed.
I'm 56 now, and Arthur Brooks writes about this in his book, From Strength to Strength, which I strongly recommend, um, about the things that, our brains work differently in middle age than they did when we were young adults.
Yeah.
And when you're 32 and you're striving and you're trying to, put your first bones in the bank, and you're just starting to build your net worth, the things that motivate you are very different than, after I was single back then, but when you're married and you have kids
Yep.
and what you're trying to do is raise a stable, is to create a stable home life and raise good kids. You know, taking every single business trip that you can take to hit your and exceed your monthly quota is it's gonna come at a much higher personal cost than it did when you were young.
I agree.
So align yourself with what's right, with the company you feel, you share values with,
Mm,
and be cognizant of where you are in life and what's important to you.
I love that.
Because if you wake up and you're not excited about the way your day is, what you've got waiting for you on your calendar for that day, it's gonna not be very fun, and life won't be very enjoyable.
Well, I think we've all been there. I certainly have.
A
And,
100%. And it's
you
not
know,
that every day is perfect. It's just that,
no,
like, in general, you should feel you should feel excited about what you're up to, like, with the long-term plan, and then, those days that dictates what your days are composed of, and you should be excited about, what you're working toward.
I agree. And I think there's entrepreneurship is very sexy right now. There's a lot of people
Hmm.
leaving corporate because they're so unhappy. They don't have any autonomy. Leadership is not great, which is why I built the show. Um, and so they're fleeing for something better. And what I'm seeing a lot of, and I'd love your perspective on this, is they're fleeing to a gig that requires a different skill set. They haven't built the foundation and the structure to make it work. And they find themselves, 12 months in, 18 months in, a little out of their depth, and they end up making a return to
Yeah,
corporate.
that
So,
makes complete sense.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
what's been your take?
well, my take is that if you shift gears mid-career or late career, which I think is going to become the norm if
Yeah.
it hasn't already, that reinvention is an absolute necessary thing. The difference is that, you have to. I've I've a piece I've written on my Substack called "Dare to Suck," and this comes from a T-shirt I got when I was in acting school in Los Angeles during my first stint as a stand-up comedian. And the teacher handed out T-shirts that said "Dare to Suck," and I'm like, why would this teacher tell us to suck? She's not saying that you should suck. She's saying that you're starting something new, and you do suck, and you will suck until you put in the time to suck no more.
Mm,
And the difference is that when you're mid-career and you've been VP of this or that, and you've grown accustomed to a big paycheck, you've grown accustomed to the respect you've earned in your industry, to the implicit knowledge, or to the I'm using the wrong word there, to just the innate knowledge of your industry and its components and its structure and who's what, and the long term and the secondary and tertiary effects of something that happens. That is a level of comfort that you have in your career, in your life, in your professional status, that when you're going to reinvent yourself, goes away
mhm.
for the most part. Oh, and by the way, if you used to work at fill in the name of big company, Gillette in Boston, you know what? And then you go out on your own. The people that used to return your calls because you had a big budget or because you had a lot of
Right.
influence, you're going to find out who's really your friend and who's not. Because, and not to say that people are mean or selfish, but they've got
But you're
priorities.
you're serving a different purpose now, and they're not going to have the need to talk to you the way they used to. So they could have
A
loved
hundred
you.
percent, a
And
hundred percent. And you've got to be willing to start over and be uncomfortable,
yeah.
uncomfortable with where things go, uncomfortable with, like, hey, your laptop, the printer breaks, you can't call IT,
Yeah.
you know,
You
it's your
got it's
printer,
your
bro.
problem. You got
Yeah,
to do
you
your
got to.
own books. You got to do your own taxes. You got to book your own travel, all
Yeah,
that
all
stuff.
those delicious medical benefits that you used to take for granted, bye bye.
Yeah,
They're not there.
that's a wake up call.
Welcome to healthcare.gov, my friend.
Yeah.
So, which is expensive and not glamorous.
No.
So all these things, starting over in your mid 50s, you go, what? It's uncomfortable for a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
And you basically have to start the clock again on your 10,000 hours,
Yeah.
um, to, again, beckon an overused cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason.
Yeah.
And but what happens is, at first you feel self-conscious and you're like, well, why am I, what are people going to say? I'm going to do this thing. I can't really explain it. It doesn't really fit my career path. And then you keep doing it for a while. And after you do it for a few years, people start to go, hey, tell me how you made this change. And you realize that people are jealous of you because
Oh,
you've committed
100%.
to this new thing. And they're like, I'm really not feeling great about my career. And I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do in my back half of my career. And could I reinvent myself? Could I start like, could I make muffins out of my home? Fill in the blank, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's certainly no dumber than being a stand-up comedian,
Yeah.
right?
My advice for anybody who's entertaining these thoughts, start a side hustle and
For sure.
build that, create your brand, start to get some recognition if you're making sourdough or you're making muffins or you're
Whatever it
making
is.
friendship bracelets or dog treats or whatever. Start and be local and build a brand and let it thrive. But do it while you have money coming in because it's really
Totally.
fucking hard
Totally.
when you don't.
But yeah, it's not just money. I mean, it's also social structure and predictability. And,
Yes.
there's all these dreams we have when we're a corporate person. Like when I was at Facebook, um, I always thought, man, this job is keeping, I want to do things like travel the world and speak Spanish and all these things. And this job is keeping me from doing that. And after I quit, I did take some trips and they were fun, but like you can't just travel all the time, especially if you have young kids.
Mhm.
And I was like, I do want to speak Spanish and so I'm going to start taking Spanish lessons. And I did, and I signed up for Spanish lessons. And a month or two in, we started studying, like the 18 different past tense verb structures that they have. And I was like, oh, wait, I remember why I
This
don't
is the
speak
fun
Spanish
part.
anymore. Because this is hard.
Yeah.
Because if I really want to speak Spanish, I both have to be comfortable being bad at Spanish for several years and memorizing all these crazy different verb tenses, which I don't really want to do. And unless I'm going to move to
You
a
just
place
want the
where they speak Spanish,
conversation part.
I thought it'd be cool to to be able to speak Spanish. And it is fun when you occasionally travel someplace or you meet somebody on the
Yes.
street and you can speak a little bit of Spanish, and that is cool. But I wasn't committed to it.
Yeah.
And if you're not committed to it, don't quit your job to go do it,
It's a really good
And
point.
so dabbling as a side hustle, start doing those. I'm in agreement with you. Start doing it before you commit it full time because you might find out that some of your dreams are fantasies.
I,
And
mm, I love that.
and better to find that out before you bail on what's good about your job.
Totally agree. All right, hold that thought. We'll be back in 30 seconds. I've got a question. I want to talk a little bit about your show, and then I have a bunch of questions to follow that up. So sit tight for 30 seconds, guys. Hang on one second. If you like the stories you hear every week on this show, guess what? I have hundreds more from my nearly 30 years in the leadership trenches. And I don't just talk about building irresistible culture, I do it. You can bring me into Keynote, moderate your panels, or work directly with your leaders to drive material change. So let's roll up our sleeves, go out to heartbeatforhire.com, let's connect, and let's make some magic happen. Go lead with heart. All right, Paul. So I do want to talk about your show because you have an incredible podcast called Reasonably Unhappy, Reasonably Happy, Reasonably Happy,
Reasonably happy.
Reasonably Happy. And
Yes.
yeah, I want to hear like what was the reason you started it? What is the show all about? I know you have some
Yeah.
pretty spectacular guests.
When I started the podcast 6 years ago, it was called Crazy Money. And it was all about this concept that I'd been reading about so much after I'd left Facebook and found myself well healed, but not happier than I ever was before. And I was like, what's going on here? Because my whole life I had said my goal is to get rich, and I achieved that goal, but I didn't feel any different. I just felt
Mm-mm.
kind of like a rich loser because I wasn't doing anything anymore. And so I started reading all about money and happiness. And so it was called Crazy Money. Well, I kept that name for 5 years, but it was never a good name because
Hmm.
it sounds a little cheesy, or it sounds like I've got a secret to making millions in real estate while you sleep or something like that. And the guests that publicists who would reach out to try to pitch to get on the show were an indication that that's exactly how many people thought
Oh yeah.
it was. So I changed it. Now it's really about middle-aged happiness, and it's really about how do we become okay with being imperfect
Yeah.
and achieving a level of happiness that has to do with self-acceptance as much as it does with the exogenous metrics of success that we, pursue so heavily.
I love that. So talk a little bit about the guests because you've had some pretty incredible guests and they must be sharing some amazing thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've had probably the sexiest guest I've had is LL Cool
I
J,
mean, he is the
and
sexiest.
this is a guy that has been at the top of his game. He's been an A-lister since 1984 or 5, like for 40 years, this guy has been at the top of his game. And he shared thoughts about like, how do you sustain success and, how do you define yourself with, in Hollywood without putting the right amount of emphasis on success and things like that. I had Deepak Chopra on a couple of months ago. He was really cool. We talked about philosophy and Buddhism, and he was fascinating. Paul Schaefer, the
Yes.
David
Band
Letterman's
leader.
sidekick,
Yeah.
was on. He told stories about how, people don't remember him from Saturday Night Live, but he was the early music director on
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live. And he was the guy who put together the Blues Brothers band with John Belushi. And at some point, they were going to make the Blues Brothers movie, and Paul was working on an album with Gilda Radner. And John Belushi said, "You can't do this album with Gilda. We need you to wait and do the Blues Brothers movie." And Paul was like, "I have to work with Gilda." So John kicked him out of the band, and Paul wasn't in the Blues Brothers movie, which he was like was the most crushing
Oh,
professional experience of my career because it was a phenomenon. And so we talked about that. It's really easy to look at other people's careers and say, well, it's been a nonstop upward, progression to the right and up. But that's very rarely how careers work. And sustaining success in a career is really about accepting the ups and downs. And so
yeah.
that's one of the things that fascinates me. And I talk to a lot of people that have made a lot of money and said, try to understand how it's changed them or hasn't changed them, things like that. So yeah, I've been fortunate. I've had Stevie Van Zandt from Bruce
Yeah.
Springsteen's
Love
band. I've
him.
had some great authors, Ryan Holiday, Morgan Housel, great, great people.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations on all of that. So,
Thank
Paul,
you.
what inspires you?
People that are just, really in touch with who they want to be and go out and do things that are an expression of that. When I don't look at other comedians who are more successful than me and think, gosh, I wish I were them.
Mhm.
But when I hear a joke from somebody else that sounds like something I think, I'm like, man, I wish I would have thought of that
Right,
because
right.
it's an authentic expression of who I am. But like, it's y- you know, I'm very much impressed with people who are out there, living their lives without filter and creating value and being who they are. And by the way, that's not just comedy or music or the arts or whatever. It's people who are out there creating things in business who are that's their avenue for
I love that.
self-expression. I admire that tremendously also.
That's awesome. What would you like your legacy to be?
Well, family is the obvious one, but I want to raise good kids. I want their kids to be as proud of their parents as I am of mine. But I don't, legacy is kind of this fallacy that we all kind of buy into, but it's not long after we die that we're completely forgotten.
Mm.
And so I'm really trying to focus on every day doing my best and getting the most out of these fleeting opportunities we have to enjoy this crazy gift of life that we
I
are
think you're
granted 24 hours at a time.
I think you're leaving a pretty nice thumbprint, so I wouldn't sell yourself so
Well,
short on
thanks.
that.
Thank you.
So what's next for you?
What's next? I'm going to lunch with my cousin in an hour. I'm doing comedy shows at country clubs. I've done 40 shows at country clubs over the last 4 years. That gives me a lot of satisfaction. I'm producing those shows. The ones that I'm not headlining, I'm producing, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction to to bring in comedians that a lot of these country club audiences haven't heard of,
Mm,
and to also give these comics a glimpse into these worlds that they don't necessarily see. I also do a lot of corporate speaking, which has been a lot of fun. I've been talking about how my own sense of perfectionism kind of limited my career
mm,
upside, and I walked away from a lot of stuff at Facebook that I could have gotten more out of professionally and financially if I hadn't been so focused on making everything perfect.
yeah.
And so it's really satisfying to speak to corporate audiences as well.
I think that kind of harkens back to what we were talking about earlier of your mindset in your 30s or your late 20s versus your mindset in your 50s and the reflection, the ability to look back on it and be like, God, I spent so much time trying to make everything just so. And
Yeah,
it was a lot of
yeah,
wasted energy. And
I think
that's
it
the gift
was.
of age, right?
You put, yeah, partially, yeah.
So where can people find you?
My Substack is words.paulollinger.com. Ollinger is Ollinger. And that has links to most of the stuff that I'm doing, my podcast, my Substack writing, etc.
Perfect. And we will share all of your socials in the show notes. But guys, please reach out to Paul. He's doing incredible things. He has an amazing show. I hope you check it out and sit tight. We have an audience question coming right up. But Paul, thank you for being a fabulous guest and sharing your story. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Thank you, Lindsay.
All right, guys, sit tight. Here comes an audience question. Thanks, Paul. Today's audience question is a good one. What is the best way to address a mistake I made as manager? Well, the good news is we're all human. We all make mistakes. And I will tell you from my own experience and from coaching a lot of other leaders, when you make a mistake and you know you've made this mistake, the best thing you could do is own it. And when you can come to the table and say, hey, I didn't handle that the way I wanted to, or I wish I did it this way, you deserved better, you are going to build a stronger relationship. And sometimes those moments of strife, those moments of conflict will create a stronger bond, more trust, more authenticity. But I will tell you just from observing leaders that I've worked for, whenever they said, hey, I didn't carry myself the way I wanted to, or I don't like the message I gave to you all and I want to redo it. Can you have some patience with me? They always earn my respect. So it's not a bad thing to own your mistakes. Nobody wants to make mistakes, but we all fail in one way, shape, or form. Failure is a natural part of growth, of learning, and we're all human. So it's going to happen. But how you choose to respond to that failure is up to you. So get out there, lead with heart, have a great day, and thanks as always for listening. If you like what you heard, go subscribe to the YouTube channel, go out to Apple, Spotify, leave a 5-star review. They mean so much. It's such a great way to connect with you all. Keep the questions coming. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or consider leaving a 5-star review and a great rating at Spotify or Apple. Thank you so much for your support. Have a great day.